Hello, everyone! Few public figures in recent times have sparked such mixed reactions as Meghan Markle. To her critics, she symbolizes self-centeredness and insincerity, with actions that often seem calculated to serve her own interests, even at the expense of others. While her speeches highlight themes of compassion and authenticity, some argue her true persona tells a different story. One of the most striking criticisms centers on her pursuit of fame. Despite expressing a desire for a private life, Meghan has actively sought the spotlight. From signing multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify to attending high-profile events, her actions paint a picture of someone driven by the allure of celebrity status. Critics claim this pursuit undermines her credibility, making her appear more focused on personal gain than on meaningful philanthropy. Even Meghan's charitable efforts are not free from criticism. While her supporters praise her as a humanitarian, skeptics argue that her actions often seem more staged than sincere. Planting trees for a photo op or writing letters to disadvantaged women while wearing luxury outfits makes her appear more focused on image than impact. To her critics, Meghan embodies contradiction. A woman who talks about unity but is accused of creating division, who promotes authenticity while presenting a carefully curated persona, and who speaks of compassion while showing patterns of self-interest. For those disillusioned by what they see as hypocrisy, Meghan is less a victim of circumstance, and more a skilled strategist. They argue she has built her platform not through genuine merit, but by leveraging controversy. Meghan's ongoing story is a stark reminder that public perception relies heavily on actions, not just words. To her detractors, her statements feel empty, overshadowed by behaviors that seem more about self-preservation than meaningful connection. Whether this perception shifts over time remains uncertain. For now, Meghan remains a polarizing figure whose every move continues to ignite debate and draw criticism, with her calculated public presence a source of both intrigue and ridicule. Even Meghan's most devoted fans sometimes struggle to overlook the contradictions that seem to define her. Public image. In a world where appearances matter, her fashion choices and demeanor often leave people puzzled. From poorly fitted silhouettes and dull color schemes to mismatched accessories, her style feels less like effortless elegance and more like a strained attempt to create an impression. Take, for example, her tendency to dress down at significant public events. Critics argue this isn't a sign of humility, but rather a strategy to shift focus away from a perceived lack of substance. Her frequent choices of oversized coats, shapeless dresses, and puzzling combinations of designer pieces seem less about making a statement and more about fostering confusion. The result is a persona that seems to aim for relatability, but instead comes across as disconnected from both the fashion world and everyday people. This attempt to project modesty through unflattering fashion choices stands in stark contrast to her other actions, creating an image that feels inconsistent and hard to reconcile. Despite her claims of avoiding the spotlight, Meghan's preference for extravagant jewelry from luxury brands undermines her carefully crafted image of simplicity. Appearing adorned in diamonds while championing causes like income equality only strengthens critics' accusations of hypocrisy. If Meghan truly wanted her message to take center stage, why do her choices often project excess and vanity instead, critics also see her lack of cohesive style as a reflection of her overall public approach. Just as her outfits often seem rushed and directionless, so too does her narrative in the public eye feel fragmented and inconsistent. From advocating for environmental sustainability while flying on private jets to addressing mental health concerns. While leveraging personal grievances, Meghan's actions frequently contradict her words, leaving even her supporters grappling with a widening credibility gap. One glaring example of such missteps was her appearance at a high-profile charity gala. Instead of directing attention to the event's critical issues, Meghan drew focus for all the wrong reasons. Dressed in a wrinkled, unflattering outfit, more appropriate for a casual outing than a formal evening, she faced widespread criticism for appearing out of touch with the occasion's tone and significance. Meghan faced criticism not only for her apparent lack of effort, but also for what many saw as disregard for the significance of the event. The contrast was striking. While other attendees radiated elegance and professionalism, Meghan's appearance fell noticeably short. Defenders argue that her look reflected her authentic self, but detractors claimed it was a calculated attempt to attract attention, whether positive or negative. The narrative that Meghan is a perpetual victim of unfair scrutiny becomes increasingly difficult to sustain when her actions often seem designed to invite exactly that. While she portrays herself as a target, critics point out the irony that she frequently takes on the role of the aggressor in her own story. To cast oneself as a victim while leaving behind strained relationships and burned bridges is a strategy that many see as deeply hypocritical. Her strained relationship with her own family has long fueled controversy, with her father, Thomas Markle, openly expressing sadness over her apparent coldness and estrangement. This adds another layer to the complex and polarizing narrative surrounding Meghan, as critics view her choices as part of a pattern of self-interest over genuine connection. Critics claim Meghan's pattern of behavior carried over seamlessly into her royal life, where her alleged self-interest reportedly caused tension and division. Her apparent obsession with being noticed, even at the cost of decorum, seems to influence every aspect of her public life. Attempts to stand out often backfire, leaving her looking more desperate than distinguished. This tendency extends beyond her fashion choices to her actions. At public events, Meghan has been accused of inserting herself into moments where her presence wasn't required or welcomed, often turning occasions meant to honor others into opportunities for self-promotion. A notable example occurred during a widely publicized award ceremony where her theatrical expressions and exaggerated gestures became a distraction from the actual honorees. What should have been an elegant evening celebrating achievements was overshadowed by Meghan's apparent need to take center stage. Critics labeled her behavior as performative, accusing her of using every platform as a stage to satisfy an unrelenting desire for attention. This perceived desperation for validation starkly contrasts with the detached, composed image she often portrays in interviews and public statements. While Meghan claims to be uninterested in fame, her actions suggest otherwise. Critics argue that her meticulously crafted, relatable persona fails to align with the calculated and attention-seeking behavior they observe. Critics argue that Meghan's relatable persona is little more than a facade, crafted to hide a deep need for attention and control. Even her widely promoted humanitarian efforts are not spared from scrutiny. While Meghan often uses these initiatives to speak about empathy and understanding, detractors claim her actions appear more self-serving than altruistic. The focus, they argue, is rarely on the cause but rather on Meghan herself, with every charitable act meticulously documented and publicized. Whether she's planting trees in stilettos or making surprise visits to charities with cameras in tow, her approach to philanthropy is often criticized as feeling more like a publicity stunt than a sincere attempt to create meaningful change. Additionally, critics point to a stark contrast between her public image and her alleged treatment of those around her. Stories of mistreatment towards staff and colleagues depict someone who demands perfection from others but offers little support in return. This perceived gap between her words and actions only adds fuel to claims that Meghan's actions prioritize self-promotion over genuine compassion. This perceived double standard has earned Meghan a reputation for being difficult to work with, a narrative her critics are quick to emphasize. Even her efforts to connect with the public often come across as tone-deaf and disconnected. Her speeches, filled with buzzwords and vague platitudes, frequently lack the authenticity and depth needed to genuinely resonate with audiences. Whether addressing her personal struggles or discussing global issues, Meghan's words often feel overly rehearsed and insincere, reinforcing the criticism that she is more of a performer than a genuine advocate. Her social media presence, or lack thereof, also plays a role in shaping her public image. While Meghan has distanced herself from platforms like Instagram and Twitter, critics suggest this is less about safeguarding her mental health and more about controlling the narrative. By limiting direct access to her thoughts and actions, she ensures her story is presented on her terms, leaving little room for opposing viewpoints or unfiltered truths. Despite her efforts to project empowerment and resilience, her actions often reveal underlying insecurities. Critics argue that her relentless quest for attention and validation stems from a deep fear of irrelevance. This fear, they claim, drives her to seek the spotlight at any cost, whether through her fashion choices, public appearances, or carefully crafted narratives. Orchestrated interviews and carefully staged appearances further highlight Meghan's determination to stay at the center of public discourse, even if it comes at the cost of alienating those around her. The ongoing examination of Meghan Markle's public persona paints a picture of a complex and often contradictory figure whose actions frequently clash with her stated values. While her supporters view her as a trailblazer and advocate, critics see her as a skilled manipulator, leveraging her platform to serve personal ambitions rather than drive meaningful change. As the story surrounding Meghan continues to evolve, one thing is certain: her critics show no signs of quieting. Whether it's her fashion choices, public demeanor, or accusations of hypocrisy, Meghan remains a divisive figure, drawing both admiration and harsh criticism with every move she makes. To her detractors, Meghan is less a beacon of empowerment, and more a cautionary tale, a reminder of the risks of prioritizing image over authenticity. Some also argue that the intense scrutiny she faces stems in part from envy, adding yet another layer of complexity to her polarizing presence in the public eye. Meghan seems to harbor resentment toward other royals, particularly Catherine, the Princess of Wales. The contrast between the two has always been striking. Catherine is often seen as a symbol of grace, duty, and quiet strength, while Meghan faces accusations of seeking constant validation and media attention. Critics argue that Meghan appears to position herself as a rival to Catherine, creating a dynamic that feels manufactured and unnecessary. From comparisons in fashion and public engagements to their roles within the royal family, Meghan's actions are frequently perceived as attempts to outshine rather than support her royal counterparts. The British monarchy, with its centuries-old tradition of dignity and purpose, has endured numerous challenges. However, Meghan's critics argue that she misunderstood its essence entirely during her brief tenure as a royal. Instead of contributing meaningfully to the institution, her actions seem focused on using it as a stepping stone for personal benefit. If there's one sentiment that resonates across the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, it's that Meghan Markle is unlikely to ever be welcomed back into the royal family. Her departure from royal duties, which was presented as a quest for freedom and independence, now appears to many as an elaborate PR move. It's hard to reconcile the claims of wanting a quieter life with the ongoing efforts to remain firmly in the public eye. Meghan's relationship with public scrutiny has taken an unexpected turn as she now courts the media with a fervor that would leave even the most seasoned Hollywood publicist impressed. From Netflix deals to tell-all books, every move she makes seems to scream opportunism, a blatant effort to capitalize on her brief connection with the royal family in order to secure fame and fortune. Then there are the melodramatic interviews where Meghan shared her version of mistreatment within the royal institution. According to her, she was a helpless victim trapped in the gilded cage of Buckingham Palace. But for those who saw past the tears and rehearsed stories, it became clear that Meghan's true issue wasn't with the monarchy itself, but with the fact that she wasn't the center of its world. The public in the United Kingdom saw through this act from the moment Meghan began planning her royal exit. The respect and admiration traditionally afforded to royal family members were quickly replaced by skepticism and disdain. Meghan, with her thinly veiled contempt for tradition and protocol, positioned herself not as a team player, but as an outsider, trying to reshape the monarchy to fit her own image. Her actions didn't just alienate the British public, they offended the very values of the Commonwealth. For many in these nations who have long seen the monarchy as a symbol of unity, Meghan's disregard for her responsibilities was shocking. Her behavior was viewed not as a modernizing influence, but as a betrayal of the institution she had married into. Her continued use of the royal title after stepping away only fueled public resentment. Despite her claims of distancing herself from royal life, Meghan has repeatedly used her Duchess title to gain access to opportunities, whether gracing magazine covers or launching ventures under the Sussex brand. Every move she makes highlights her reluctance or inability to truly sever ties with the very institution she has so openly criticized. The irony is striking. Meghan, who once claimed she wanted to escape the confines of royal life, now clings to its remnants as though they are her lifeline. Her actions reveal a woman desperate to stay relevant, even if it means exploiting a system she says she despises. While her supporters may argue she is simply reclaiming her narrative, her critics view it as yet another example of hypocrisy and self-interest. The British public, known for its resilience and pragmatism, is unlikely to be swayed by these contradictions. British public has made its opinion of Meghan clear. Polls consistently show a steep decline in her popularity, with many seeing her as an opportunist who put personal ambitions ahead of her royal duties. Even more telling is the widespread belief that Meghan should never be allowed to return to royal life. The monarchy, and by extension the nation, has moved on, and many feel it is better off without her. Yet Meghan's persistent efforts to capitalize on her royal connection suggest she hasn't fully grasped this sentiment. Whether it's launching podcasts or writing children's books, her recent projects often feature subtle references to her time within the royal family. It seems as though Meghan is determined to keep reminding the world of her brief role as a duchess despite claiming to have moved on. The Commonwealth nations, many of which are grappling with their own challenges, have little tolerance for Meghan's continued antics. These nations, which have long viewed the British monarchy as a symbol of stability and continuity, see Meghan's actions as a betrayal of their trust. Her behavior has not only damaged her own reputation, but also cast a shadow over the institution she once represented. Allegations of her demanding nature and reported bullying of palace staff during her brief time as a working royal sparked a media frenzy, earning her the nickname Duchess Difficult. Yet, instead of addressing these accusations with humility, Meghan chose to play the victim, blaming those around her for not accepting her presence. Critics argue that this tactic of deflecting blame is a clear sign of her unwillingness to take responsibility. They contend that Meghan's inability to truly move on from the royal family reveals her true motives. Far from being a victim, she is seen as a master manipulator, someone who has skillfully used her royal connections to advance her own goals. While her supporters may view her as a trailblazer, her critics see her as a cautionary tale, a warning about the dangers of putting personal ambition above collective responsibility. The disdain for Meghan goes beyond her actions. It extends to her very persona. Her critics describe her as calculating, self-centered, and out of touch with reality. They argue that her attempts to present herself as a relatable figure fall flat, further fueling their skepticism of her intentions. Meghan's actions are often undermined by her lavish lifestyle and tone-deaf statements, whether it's preaching about climate change while flying on private jets or discussing mental health while refusing to take responsibility for her own public controversies. Her behavior frequently contradicts her words. One of the most damning criticisms of Meghan is her ability to alienate nearly everyone she's encountered, from former friends to royal staff. The stories of her alleged mistreatment and high-handed behavior are too numerous to ignore. These accounts paint a picture of someone who demands loyalty and admiration, yet offers little in return. This stands in stark contrast to the values of service and humility that the monarchy upholds. As Meghan continues her pursuit of relevance, it's clear that both the British public and the Commonwealth have little interest in her narrative. The consensus is clear. Meghan Markle is not and will never be a true member of the royal family. Her actions show she cares more about promoting herself than helping others. The hope now is that Meghan will step away from the monarchy and create her own future without depending on her royal ties. The British people and the monarchy deserve better than to be used for Meghan's PR purposes. If she truly wants the independence she talks about, it's time to leave the royal family behind for good. The message from the UK and the Commonwealth is clear. Meghan Markle is no longer welcome. The monarchy has survived for centuries by putting duty above personal gain, and it will keep going strong without her. The sooner Meghan accepts this truth, the better for her, the royal family, and those who once believed she could make a difference. Meghan's attempt to appear caring and selfless is one of her biggest contradictions. She often talks about important issues like mental health and equality, but her actions don't always match her words. A great example is her well-known interview with Oprah Winfrey, where she accused the royal family of racism without giving any solid proof. While some people felt sympathy for her, others thought it was a reckless and selfish move. It seemed like she was willing to damage the reputation of an institution she had no problem benefiting from when it worked in her favor. Her supposed compassion is also questioned by the way she lives her life. She wants to be seen as a person. Who cares? Yet her choices don't always reflect that. Some people see Meghan as a champion for the less fortunate, but others criticize her for spending too much and always seeking attention. Her luxurious life, from her multi-million-dollar mansion in Montecito to her designer clothes, feels far removed from what most people experience. Her complaints about royal life, a life many consider a privilege, only make this gap wider. Adding to the controversy, Meghan often seems to rewrite history to fit her own story. Critics point out how her interviews and public statements sometimes contradict themselves, with details and timelines not always matching up. Whether it's about her supposed lack of knowledge on royal rules or the truth behind her charity work, many believe she twists the facts to make herself look better. People also question her relationship with Prince Harry, wondering about the true nature of their partnership. To some people, it looks like Meghan is in charge of the relationship, pulling Harry away from his family and creating a life where everything revolves around her. When the couple chose to step back from their royal roles, an act often called Megxit, some viewed it as a selfish move, driven by Meghan's need for attention. Harry, who was once loved by many, now appears as someone who follows Meghan's lead, with his public statements often reflecting her concerns rather than his own. Meghan's way of raising their children, Archie and Lilibet, has also been criticized, especially since she keeps them mostly out of the public eye. While some see this as a way to protect them, others argue that it doesn't match her desire for attention in other parts of her life. Critics believe this is just another attempt by Meghan to control the story, showing her family only when it benefits her image.